We are joined now by a very, very, very special guest, a legend in the business, media titan, chairman of Liberty Media, and the man behind some of the biggest deals in media of our time, John Malone, author of Born to be Wired, Lessons from a Lifetime Transforming Television, Wiring America for the Internet, and Growing Formula One, Discovery, SiriusXM, and the Atlanta Braves. It is out today, and we want to welcome John for joining us today. John, it's great to see you. Congratulations on the book. It's a fabulous, fabulous book, and there's so many stories in it about so many unique characters that make headlines that we talk about virtually every day. I want to talk about the book, and then I want to get into what's going on in the media landscape that we know today. But just take me back to the beginning of even deciding to write this book, why you did.
Well, there was a previous book called Cable Cowboy, which really was a misnomer because it was really should have been written about my mentor, Bob Magnus. But anyway, it stuck to me. The writer of that book approached me and said, you should do a sequel because it's been 25 years and you're not dead yet. And so he was going to write a sequel, and we started working on it together, and it became increasingly my autobiography as opposed to his view of me. And that's why it got written. I probably, if I had known how much work it was going to be, I probably wouldn't have done it.
It felt to me like this was an emotional book because you talk about the various relationships and how important those relationships have been in your life and, frankly, to the business. You go through a great sequence, which I'd love to get your thoughts on today, about Ted Turner and your relationship with him and, frankly, your hope that you had wished you could have bought Turner at the time.
Yeah. Long history with Ted. He came to us with the idea of his superstation. It took some convincing, but we ultimately launched it, carried it across our cable footprint. When Ted got in a bit of trouble trying to buy MGM, we had to get together. The industry got together. I was proud to lead the effort, and we raised, I don't know, $600 million, which was real money back then, to get him out of the clutches of Kirk Kerkorian. And Ted was on our board for many years at TCI. So we had a very long history, and we were pretty good personal friends, too. I traveled with Ted quite a bit. Goodwill games in Russia, for instance. Great stories. Ted was and continues to be quite a character. I've become the godfather of his Atlanta Braves baseball team and trying to nurture it along. I know he's very proud of the team. So we have a lot of things in common. We have ranches that are back to back in New Mexico. I went quail hunting with he and Jane a number of times. All kinds of things. Great stories, great history. He's a hell of a character and a very sound businessman.
Well, let me ask you about another businessman who I think you respect deeply, and there's a fascinating sequence in the book about it. And we had actually spoken to this gentleman earlier in the year because he had his own book out, which is Barry Diller. And you two got in maybe a scuffle is maybe too polite a term because you went to court and it almost broke the relationship. And then you wrote him a letter. Take us back to that moment because it was an emotional moment. I remember when we had Barry on the show talking about what had happened.
Well, what happened was my CEO at the time at Liberty Media, Greg Maffei, had a rocky history with Barry. And when Barry decided to break up IAC, collection of businesses, and distribute some of the businesses not reflecting our control structure that we had in IAC that had been in place for a number of years, we decided to ask the court how to interpret my original agreement with Barry. It was a very unusual agreement. Barry was such an incredible talent. The only way I could get him to work with us, I don't think for us, work with us, was to give him a proxy on my control of the company we were going to create together. And I did that. That was, I don't know, 35 years ago, something like that. And he did a fabulous job of building a business, starting out in home shopping, mutating into content, and then once again mutating into internet services. Really pretty unique performance. But as he was about to split the company into multiple pieces, there was a question, a legitimate legal question, about what the intent of the original agreement was. And I wanted to go to court and ask a judge to interpret that agreement for us. Unfortunately, the legal situation got out of control, and it became almost a Ted Kozlowski type of set of disputes, which I didn't want any part of. And I was really embarrassed by how far out of control our litigation had gotten. And I wanted to apologize to Barry personally for not having paid a close enough attention and kept it on the rails. So that was the genesis of that.
Hey, John, as someone that people follow so closely, and obviously a legendary in media and in all different aspects of it, another kerfuffle was right before Discovery was going to merge with Warner Media. And I think you made some comments about, I think to our own David Faber here, about CNN hiring some actual journalists. Now since then, I know that was quite a moment, and that did result in some changes at CNN, and then I don't know, and some even more changes after that. And then we've seen what's happened with CBS and the Stephen Colbert and pressure from the Trump administration. I've always said that almost any mainstream media entity you could have almost made the same comments about. John, do you think CNN has changed to the point where you are seeing actual journalism now? Do you see it across mainstream media anywhere? No,
and in fact, it's very difficult. I get it. I was around when you guys were created. Zaslav and I basically created CNBC.
Yes.
I was around. I was partners with Rupert when they created Fox News. We used to own McNeil Lehrer as a public service. We supported that effort on public broadcasting for many years. So I've been in and around the news delivery game for a long while, and I've always struggled with the question of news. Just give me the news, the factual news, and how do you separate news from the impossible bias that the journalist has? They always come to it with preconceived attitudes. When Rupert pitched Fox News, it was going to be that we're going to have a true news division that will be just the news. And I guess you would say that's Bret Baier today. But then we're going to have essentially entertainment programming focused on news and current events and culture and so on. And that was his formula. And CNN decided to stay and try and be just news, as opposed to news and comedy and entertainment. My view was that that it was okay for Fox to do what they did as long as you labeled opinion as opinion, like the newspapers did. You have journalism, you have the facts, and then you have editorial opinions, and then you may have guest editorials. And you can make it all interesting and entertaining, but what you're calling factual news It would be nice to be just factual news. Now, I know how difficult that is. CNN has great journalists. They always have had great journalists. They have a large organization that does the best job of covering breaking news worldwide. That clearly is a big strength for them. The reality is that journalism schools turn out people who tend to be reformers. They tend to want to fix the world from the journalistic perspective. So they tend to be, quote unquote, progressives personally. And it's impossible to separate that sort of personal opinion structure from the way they cover news, the kind of adjectives that come to their mind when they are reporting a story. Now, I never had much to do with CNN. You know, I was chair of the governance committee at Warner. I stepped off that board this spring and became executive a chairman emeritus, but so that they could keep me tied up and, you know, I could continue to be involved, but not be a voting member of the board. Even during the 3 years when I was on the board of the combined company, I had zero to do with the governance of CNN. That was David and his efforts to bring in leadership, new leadership. It's as you guys well know, the linear television business, of which news is part, is suffering from the rapid decline of viewership of the big cable bundle. And that's putting a lot of pressure on these organizations, financial pressure. And they're going to have to figure out where it's appropriate to morph to be more relevant in a streaming world.